New World is one of the biggest names in the MMO genre, despite only being released a little over a year ago. The entire MMO community was shocked as it managed to break active players and Twitch views records immediately upon release, winning over unprecedented amounts of players from all over the genre. Unfortunately for its creators, Amazon Game Studios, the intense popularity of New World did not last long. Due to many bugs and server issues as well as a rocky opening to the game and lack of endgame content, many players stopped playing the game over the months, including myself and the group of friends I played the game with. A year has passed since then, and while many MMO players stopped keeping up with New World, its developers never gave up on the game. They were determined to fix all of its issues and win the community over as they've done before. And after a full year of constant updates and with the recent release of the game's fresh start servers, the time has come to answer one question: New World, is it good now? Hello everyone, my name is Nerdstorm, and in this video I'll be trying my best to answer this question. To come up with a decisive answer, I've decided to gather a list of the most common and notable problems the community had with New World last year and check one by one whether they've been solved even partially in today's version of New World or not. Here's the list I've managed to compile. Unengaging new player experience, boring questing and storyline, bugs, crashes, and server disconnects, no enemies and visuals variety, and lacking endgame content for both PvE and PvP. Keeping this list in mind and joined by my friend and supreme thumbnail editor Ghostbane, I've launched New World for the first time in just about a year and hopped on the fresh start servers, and through our new experience in Aeternum, we found exactly which of these issues have been solved and which ones haven't. Before we get to the details, I'd like to thank everyone for your support on Twitch, Discord, and here on YouTube. If you find this video informative or enjoyable, I'll truly appreciate it if you'll consider liking it and subscribing to the channel. And with that said, let's get started. As is the tradition with every new MMO character, I've had to start up with creating the avatar of perfection, the man with the best hair possible and a perfectly fitting name. Then I rushed quickly through the tutorial, which remained almost exactly the same as last year, and I'm very thankful for that, as New World has, in my opinion, one of the most clear and memorable tutorials out of any MMO I've played, especially this transition towards its end. You can't tell me this isn't absolutely brilliant design. Immediately after the tutorial, my game began struggling, likely due to the large number of players in the starting area. Even with my beefy computer, I've experienced FPS drops as well as some slow loading textures. Thankfully, after a bit of messing with the game settings, this issue was quickly resolved and has not returned at all during my entire playthrough. On to bigger and better things. Right from the first quest, a completely new and recurring element of New World started occurring. The voice of Isabella, one of the main villains of the game, could be heard as she's complaining, raging, and taunting the new player. This is a wonderful addition to the game as it helps immerse the new player in the world, explain more of its narrative, and make us want to continue to explore and learn more.
And they shall ruthlessly strike down their fellows. Their path to corruption begun.
Isabella's voice is heard often as the player progresses through the game story and begins to achieve their goals in Aeternum, which is a pretty clever touch. As a side note, as soon as I've heard Isabella's voice for the first time, I asked my friend Ghost why is Loba from Apex Legends in this game, as a joke, and turns out I was right. The two characters are in fact voiced by the same actress, Frida Wolf. Another notable improvement in the new player experience of the game is the abundance of weapons of all types that are scattered around the starting zone. Thanks to these, I was able to check out some of the newer weapons that were added to the game right away instead of having to craft or find these many levels and several hours later. The game's initial quest chain seemed to have been completely redone, as neither me nor Ghost could recognize any of the objectives and tasks we had to complete early on. These new quests feel a lot more fleshed out than before. The NPCs also feel so much more alive, with their own unique personalities, and they're fully voiced now.
Eat ledge, you bastards! You won't be getting a piece of crystal money that easy!
A completely different experience from the boring, soulless kill and fetch quests we recall from the game's original launch. Soon after, just minutes since we started playing, we noticed something that completely changed our perspective as returning players to the game. This random castle. Both of us have no-lifed this game for months on both its beta and after its original release, and neither of us could recall this castle, not just this specific castle on this random island, but even just any of its textures at all. While this might seem like a very small thing, this is actually one of the biggest changes I've noticed in New World. This castle was just the first out of countless locations that have been completely revamped, retextured, or created from scratch. I've never realized before how empty the island of Aeternum used to be, but exploring it now, it feels unbelievably full of notable locations. From small castles and forts to ancient haunted ruins, completely new factions inhabit many of these locations and just make the world feel so much more alive and far more exciting than it was before.
This island has always guarded the promise of paradise. Humanity cast out, deemed unworthy of such blessings. But I did not come here seeking paradise. I came for answers.
This little cinematic is an actual in-game feature. As soon as we left the starting area, we ran into this broken statue, which we've recognized from the original trailer of the game years ago. Once we interacted with it, this cinematic started playing. This is such a unique idea. This one short cinematic generated tons of nostalgia for us as returning players, and it is equally as wonderful for new players as it introduces parts of the backstory of our villain we've not heard before and once again immerses us in this world. With everything said so far, let's look back to our list of problems New World has had in the past. First of all, the new player experience. I can wholeheartedly say I am stunned by the drastic changes the dev team has managed to pull off. The starting area, while looking nearly identical to what it used to be, feels completely different and full of many new intricate aspects that are all about keeping the player engaged and entertained and make them crave more of New World. I hereby declare this issue fixed. As for the questing experience and the story, between fully voiced dialogue, immersive and lively NPCs, and so much more lore and information of this world being given to the player through many different means that don't require reading long paragraphs of dialogue and scattered notes, but are instead introduced immersively through Isabella's voices in your head, cinematics, and meaningful quests, this is a very welcome change and one that I'm kept running into later on in my playthrough as well. It's very easy to tell a ton of effort has been put into fixing these specific problems, and for that I'll call this point 2 as fixed. There are still more issues on this list, however, that we've yet to find a status of, so back to our playthrough we go. Okay, as funny as this longsword running animation is, and it truly is funny, there's a far more important matter here. Look at the city of Pridewen. It's been completely redone from the ground up. The houses look different, the walls are brand new and are unique to this territory, even the name Pridewen Hamlet is brand new. Each town in the game used to be named after the territory it was located in, Monarch's Town, Everfall Town, etc. Now each town has its own unique aesthetic, textures, and personality. Each town feels different to others, and as we've explored the rest of them, we were impressed every single time. Another side note here, you can actually parkour over the town walls and underneath the city. Devs, you might want to fix that if that was unintended, but it sure was fun. Speaking of which, the game now has a handful of new proper parkour challenges, potentially inspired by Guild Wars, which are a really cool addition. Unfortunately, not everything in the hamlet of Pridewen turned out to be perfect. When trying to access my storage, New World's equivalent of bank, the game kept opening up my inventory without showing me the contents of my storage. This issue was solved by exiting and relaunching the game. However, this resulted in a new bug. I was no longer able to see my group member on the map. I decided to just accept this one and carry on. At long last, Ghost and I made our way to the castle we originally saw from afar in the starting area, and it was a pleasant surprise. The castle had new and unique textures that only castle in this area of the map seems to have, and a new type of hostile mobs we've not run into before. Since we were quite under-leveled for this area, these mobs were actually quite a challenge to beat, which is a huge plus in my book. It's always great when a game allows you to challenge yourself rather than scale enemies down to your level to make you feel powerful. We then started completing questlines around the zone in rapid succession and explored a bunch of different and unique areas. Starting with this pirate encampment where this gunner shot his cannonballs comically high, and I've retaliated just as well. Sort of. Then, this super cool jumping puzzle quest where we had to reach some special runes. This quest in particular piqued my interest, because quests like this one used to be very common in New World before the quest revamp, but they used to be a lot more straightforward. You'd have to go to a set of ruins, make your way through a couple of boring mobs, interact with a tablet, and move on. Now this quest has a reason for sending you to these runes, requiring you to make your way through an entertaining jumping puzzle, fight on-theme mobs with their own fading textures, animations, and names, and find your way to your objective. This quest felt a lot more relevant and immersive than any of these quests used to feel in the past. We kept moving between areas, finding different buildings, ruins, and points of interest with different and varied mobs, the likes of which I have not seen in the game previously, which was yet another very welcome change. A less welcome experience was the harvesting bug, which I've ran into multiple times within the first few hours of playing, where harvesting specific resources just never ends. The action cannot complete, and your character is stuck in a harvesting animation until you cancel it. It's a very minor bug that's easy to ignore, but it was unfortunate to see some bugs from the game's launch still exist in the game today. After questing for a while, we decided to try out the new 3v3 PvP arenas, as both of us are PvP players at heart. You can queue to these arenas while questing and exploring and get teleported to them when your match is ready. We were matched with enemy players which were roughly around our levels, and while they seemed to be better equipped and more coordinated than us, the match overall felt fairly balanced. This new form of PvP was really enjoyable, as it seemed not many players were flagged for PvP in our new server, and this arena felt like it would be a wonderful endgame activity to partake in as well. At long last, we've arrived at our former home territory of Everfall, with its town which is now named Oxborough. Just like Pridewin, a lot of the town was redone, and while the major buildings remained in the same places, the majority of houses and walls have been transformed into new models and textures which are mostly found in the Everfall territory only. The same treatment has appeared to affect the majority of cities and territories, and is really one of the best changes New World's dev team could have come up with. At this point in our adventure, I think we can take another look at our list of New World's past problems and see which ones have been resolved. While I've still experienced a handful of bugs, game freezes, and micro-stuttering, the overall experience has been far smoother than ever before in New World. The bugs seem to be pretty minor, the servers handled my connection perfectly well, and my game client has not crashed even once. While there's still more to fix, I'll mark this point as greatly improved. No enemies and visual variety. This has got to be the part the dev team has put the most effort into fixing out of everything. The variation in enemies is felt constantly, whether it's new types of enemies that were added or new models amongst the same groups of mobs we've always encountered. And areas and cities' visuals, the world design, textures, and animations have all been redone brilliantly and have consistently improved over time. This issue has been completely resolved in my eyes, and I mark it as fixed. Lastly, lacking endgame content. I haven't presented a whole lot about endgame content in this video, as it's already getting quite long and I'm planning to make a different video about the latest territory added to the game, Brimstone Sands. Here's hoping I ever find time to make it. Still, there's a lot of things that are worth mentioning here. A lot has been added to the game over this past year. New weapons, dungeon variations and mutations, a ton of new locations, holiday events, parkours and jumping puzzles, an entire new zone double the size of all previous ones, new faction bases, the 3v3 PvP arena I've mentioned before, and many other activities. Many additional activities are planned to be released in the near future, and there's an entire new roadmap you can find posted online, which includes some really cool ideas. While all these things may not be quite enough for New World to compete with other MMOs endgame content quite yet, it certainly is a huge improvement to the lacking endgame content the game had on release, which consisted basically of just wars, outpost rush, and a handful of static dungeons. And so I'll mark this issue as greatly improved as well. There are still many issues New World has not solved. It hasn't fixed my massive ego, it hasn't fixed my massive forehead, and there's also the known issue of my YouTube account still not having 100 million subs, which it also has failed to fix. But in all seriousness, New World has improved drastically over the past year. It fixed many of its biggest issues and solved a ton of problems, and while it still isn't quite perfect and might struggle to win over some players from other MMOs, the direction it's been going is very promising, and I can't wait to see what the future holds for this game if it keeps going this way. Thanks everyone for watching this video. If you found it informative or enjoyable, I'll truly appreciate it if you'll consider giving it a like and subscribing to my channel. If you have any questions or noticed anything I've missed in this video, please comment down below and I'll do my best to read and respond. And lastly, if you'd like to chat with me or see more of my content, links to my Discord and Twitch can be found in the description down below. Thanks again everyone for your support, and I'll see you all in the next one.